Maybe. Thanks for joining today's webinar. And we're really excited from the IBM Security Verify standpoint to be able to talk to you about a really cool capability, a cool, powerful, modular, and a really aligned capability to what the market is asking for, what customers are asking for, and what partners are asking for. Today's topic is going to be around how we enable orchestration of identity and access management with a low-code, no-code experience to simplify the various customizations and the various use cases that enterprises have that can be complex, to simplify that through orchestrated capabilities. So today, Vivek Shankar, who's our lead product architect on the IBM Security Verify portfolio, as well as myself, are going to be taking you through an introduction of the capability, as well as taking you through 2 live demos on how the capability is experienced and how simply an admin and an organization can take advantage of not only the entire IBM Security Verify SaaS product suite and platform, but also the orchestration capabilities that are native inside the platform. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm not going to spend too much time on the sort of the drivers here. I think this is a very well-known set of data points. But fundamentally, when we think about identity and access management, it comes with its inherent challenges. The first is around breaches. The cost of data breach is up year over year at $4.45 million per data breach. And organizations struggle with the dynamics of what's going on in the market, how threat actors are actually attacking IAM systems, both from a consumer standpoint and from an internal IT workforce standpoint. So when we think about security, the goal here is to orchestrate it in a way that's seamless, frictionless for end users, but robust from a system standpoint. The second challenge that we're seeing from an identity and access management standpoint is that enterprises struggle. They struggle with the immaturities that align to being able to deliver robust identity and access management practices and platforms. And the challenge with this is shortage of skills, budget optimizations, and just the ability to understand the entire stack of an identity and access management suite and having to need that domain expertise. And this is really where we're seeing a need for simplifying IAM to help address those challenges as we think about the enterprise and how the enterprise interacts with IAM solutions. And then the last one really ties into the complexities part, but 90% of implementations are incomplete. Part of that is due to limited scope, budget, but again, this ties back into processes and tools and connecting tools and actually realizing business outcomes rather than just implementing technology for the sake of technology. So when we look at these 3 data points, among others, we really infuse being able to deliver these outcomes in how we're delivering the IBM Security Verify SaaS product to meet enterprise objectives. So with that, for those that are not familiar with IBM Security Verify, our mission's pretty simple. Our goal is to help securely connect any identity to any resource. Now, when we think of that, we peel that down into we're focusing on protecting workforce identities and consumer identities. And at the core of what we do is continuous access controls and dynamic governance and lifecycle management. You can see the set of capabilities and use cases that we support as part of our platform. So from single sign-on to multi-factor to risk-based authentication to strong modern phishing-resistant passwordless authentication with passkeys, to full-time visibility and reporting, privacy and consent, lifecycle management, threat detection and response. And what we're going to be covering today is orchestration and how we enable orchestration to stitch together what is an identity fabric and what organizations have in their existing deployment, in their existing IAM stack, to be able to seamlessly connect and streamline IAM experiences across the board. Now, from a Verify standpoint, we are fully standards-based. We support the modern protocols around OpenID Connect and SAML. Even more specifically in OpenID Connect, we support high assurance identity related to the financial grade APIs. We support passkeys. We are part of the FIDO Alliance, and as well as other emerging standards that are happening in the W3C Worldwide Web Consortium. Our approach to this is to protect resources across hybrid cloud with a zero trust posture. So this includes cloud, web, mobile, on-prem, servers, VPNs, and doing so in a singular way to help streamline security across the entire enterprise as it relates to identity and access management. So when we talk about IBM Security Verify orchestrating the identity fabric, we really peel this down into three categories in terms of orchestration. The first is around user journeys. So this is the end-to-end lifecycle of how a user registers, logs in, as well as manages their profile and their security recovery mechanisms. For example, forgot password or forgot username. The user journey is really about every touch point that the user interacts with within an organization, where identity and access management is the backbone to how that user accesses or requests access to those resources. It's all about how we streamline that experience to simplify how it's set up, but also how it's extensible and modular across those different user journey touchpoints and interactions. The second bucket is around fraud and risk. And this is about how risk evaluation is checked, how the use of threat detection and response capabilities are infused into the user journey to be able to assess a risk of a user in real time, mitigate that risk, and continuously evaluate that risk, determining which MFAs to prompt, determining whether users are using compromised credentials. This is all about assessing and overlaying fraud and risk on top of those user journeys. And then the last one is actually an area where we look to differentiate. And this is being able to use the orchestration capability across other identity providers and stacks to ultimately become that layer to streamline access management and governance capabilities across the entire enterprise stack. So this could mean your users live in a different IDP, but Verify can orchestrate a risk when set up and enforced using the Verify SaaS platform. This could be supporting legacy applications that may point to a different IDP, but still use Verify to orchestrate, again, risk and consent. So as we think about the fabric, it's all about the repositories, the directories, the multi-factor authentication methods, the risk-based solutions, the application types, legacy on-prem, and being able to, again, orchestrate that through a common layer to be able to streamline IAM operations to drive efficiencies, but also drive consistency across the entire enterprise. So what is new in the platform that enables this? So what we want to introduce here is called the IBM Security Flow Designer. And the mission of this Flow Designer is to simplify the complexities of IAM with orchestration. It's currently in a public preview. So we're working with customers, folks that have use cases that are complex, that need to be simplified, and we're working with them, enabling them in the IBM Security Verify tenant to leverage this capability in addition to existing low-code, no-code capabilities that we have in the platform. So, for example, we have the ability to apply adaptive access, which is a risk-based scoring to assess the risk score of an individual and then provide out-of-the-box mitigation without writing code. Now, as we think about the Flow Designer, this is really allowing various other components that are in the platform to be connected together in a more simplified way that also allows that extensibility across business requirements that, again, are complex, but are also highly customized. So on the screen, you'll actually see two flows that we've put together, and we're actually going to be demoing this live. But as we think about the value of the Flow Designer, it's really twofold. One is saving time. So when we think about the personas that interact with IAM solutions, a lot of them are becoming more line of business, in which the ability for them to write specific application code or custom code may be limited. So we want to empower those personas that are non-technical or limited in technical engineering and development work to also deliver value when interacting with IAM solutions and IAM platforms. The second is being able to meet any business requirement. Now, with the Flow Designer, we're able to extend out what were previously either hard-coded or hardly framed to now extensible use cases that can allow you to call out at any point in the flow and call back in for a risk score, for example. And this is where the Flow Designer allows that modularity and flexibility to expand out to the types of business requirements that are needed all through a single pane of glass and all through this orchestrated flow and engine. So with that, we're actually going to transition into the demo part of the webinar. And what I'm going to be demonstrating here is actually a pretty straightforward, but a very, very, very common use case for a lot of organizations, especially in the consumer identity and access management market. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a registration experience. We're going to collect email. We're going to collect some user attributes. We're going to collect the phone number. We're going to verify both email and phone number. And we're going to have the user create an account. Now, I'm going to do all of this without writing a single line of code. It's all going to be low code, no code driven in the sense of being able to define this experience. So with that, I'm going to switch to my IBM Security Verify environment. So this is IBM Security Verify. This is the tenant that allows you to interact and configure all the access management use cases and governance and lifecycle management use cases across the enterprise. Specifically, what we're going to be going to is under user experience, there's actually two new elements. The first element that I'll be talking to is the Flow Designer. So this is actually a flow that I previously set up. We're actually going to create one live on the call. But this one is similar in the context of being able to collect email, phone number, create a password. It'll create the user, and then the user can log in. But we're going to create this one completely from scratch, and we're actually going to add another form that collects specific user information. The other new capability in IBM Security Verify is what we call user forms. And this is actually something that ties very well to the Flow Designer in the sense that this allows for attribute collection across different stages of the user journey. So for my personal reminder, I pre-drafted some of these forms. So the ones in draft are the ones that we're actually going to be using. And the flow is going to be of the following. We're going to collect email. So we're going to select email. We're going to indicate that this is the username for the user. We're going to verify this email. And we're actually going to brand this. So we're going to brand this to a branded registration form. So this first form is going to be denoted to collect the user email and verify the email. So now we're going to publish that. Okay, so this is published as part of collecting a user email. The next one that we're going to go to is we're going to collect some additional user attributes. So we're going to actually change the element to a text input field, and we're going to collect given name, and we're going to collect last name. Okay, so we're going to change this to last name, and we're going to change this to first name. Okay, there's other things that you can add in this as well. For example, you can add a terms and consent here, agreement, and we'll add a agreement checkbox. Okay, so this is actually the next step, which is the user is going to provide their first name, last name, and also agree to terms and conditions. Okay, and similar we're going to set the branding to consistency. So we're going to brand the registration page. We're going to save changes, and we're going to publish. Okay, so this is the second form that we're going to collect information. The next one is we're going to ask for a phone number. So we're actually going to switch this to phone. We're going to make this mobile number. And we're going to actually require a verification on the phone number. And then we're going to change the branding to the appropriate branding that's needed for the registration form. And here we're going to save changes, and we're going to publish it. So notice how I'm able to create registration forms and attribute collection forms without having to write code. And this is very powerful for personas that need to quickly iterate and deliver these types of experiences. Okay, and then the last form is all about creating the password. Again, all these fields can be customized, so we're going to say create password. And we're going to go ahead and, again, correspondingly set the theme. We're going to save the settings. We're going to save it and publish. Okay, so now what we've just done is we've created 4 forms or 4 steps of collecting user information. Here we're doing the email. Here, we're then going to collect the user information, first name, last name, and then agree to terms and service. We're then going to ask for a phone number verification. And then we're going to ask for the password. And the user is going to create a password. So as I mentioned, this is a live demo. So we're going to now create the actual flow. So first things first, we got to create a flow. So we're going to say webinar registration. And then we're going to create the flow. The first thing that we get here is we get a blank canvas. And to start configuring the flow, we're now going to drag and drop the components of the flow together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a user form. We're going to connect that node to the user form. We're going to identify this user form is for email collect. The form that we created was email webinar. And we're going to set some additional properties for the configuration. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to indicate to this form to move on to the next step. So this is where we need this notion of a signal and a message event. This message event needs to be the same as this message event. So I'm just going to make sure it's unique. And we're going to enter it here. And we're going to say, okay. And then we're going to move on to the next step. So here we're going to ask for additional attributes. So coming in here, we're going to connect this to this form. This form is actually the info collection form, right? So we need to then determine which form that is. So that's this one. And then similar, we need to indicate a signal to move on to the next step. So here we're then going to add another message event as part of the configuration. So this may seem a little too simple to be true, but this is truly how we're able to create that multi-step registration form. So let me continue on this path. I'm just going to add 2 more tasks to complete the flow. The next one is we're going to do a phone validation. So we're going to do phone validation. Here we're going to get the phone webinar, the one that we created. And then we're going to correspondingly add the message event to continue to have the workflow node to continue to the next stage. And then the last form we need to add is to create the password. So here we're going to create the password. So we're going to say password create. We're going to do the password form. And again, similar to the signal. As you can see, the flow can be expanded, retracted as needed. And then we're going to add one more message event. Okay, so what we've done here is we've started the flow, collected email, collected other information, collected phone, allowed the user to create a password. And then at the end of this event, what we're going to do is we're going to have the user, we're going to create a user. So we're going to have a task that says create user. So this is going to create the user in the Verify Cloud directory. Okay, and then we're going to, once the user's created, we're actually going to redirect them to log in. And for this purpose, I'm just going to have them log in back to the Verify tenant and environment. So I'm going to click redirect, and I'm going to just give it the URL here. Okay, and then we're going to do an end event. So this is now telling the workflow this is done. Okay, so what did we just do here? We created a multi-step user registration experience, and assuming I've done everything correct as we are doing in the live demo, we're going to now execute it. So to execute the workflow, we have this execution URL that is available to use. And for some reason, oh, I have to publish it. Okay, so published, and then now I should get the execution URL. So I'm going to copy this URL. Okay, so this is the workflow that we just created, and then we're now going to actually go through it. So the user that I'm going to be creating an account with is mspatel@alumni.ncsu.edu. That user doesn't exist. So let's go through the workflow. So first things first, this is the flow, and for some reason the branding didn't apply. So let me just go check this real quick. Yep, okay. So let me just fix this branding. Let me just make sure this is all. Yep, that's good. And then that's good. So all four of these should have the same branding. Okay, so we're gonna redo this execution URL to start the workflow. So notice how the branding automatically changes. That's how simply it is to manage branding. So I'm going to provide email. Now I'm going to verify that email. So let me go get the OTP. Waiting for the one-time password. Okay, got it. Okay, so I'm going to verify that. Now my email is verified. I'm going to provide first name, last name. Notice how I did terms of service, and actually if I go in, it's actually a link to our orchestration use cases and documentation. But this is the terms and conditions that can be applied. Now I'm going to do a mobile verification and collecting phone number. Now I got a one-time password, so I'm going to type that in. Okay, I'm going to verify that. Now I'm going to create a password. Okay, and now I'm actually going to log in. My user was created. Now, a few things happening here. We're orchestrating fraud and risk as part of this. Notice how the password that I created as a user, I'm now being alerted that it's on a list of common phished and stolen credentials. So this is my opportunity as a consumer to change this or employee to change this. But for this case, I'm just going to continue. And notice how on my first login, I'm now being evaluated for risk based on the user creation I did. And now I'm being challenged with a MFA. Here, I'm going to use SMS. And I'm going to type that in. Okay, and I'm going to submit that. And now I'm logged in. So notice how I just created an end-to-end user registration experience with out-of-the-box fraud detection and threat detection related to use of compromised credentials without really writing a single line of code. And to show you the end output here, we now have a user created. And when we go into the reports, we're able to see the user that logged in, their starting risk score, how they assessed and mitigated that risk score, and the fact that that user at that point in time used a compromised credential. So this is what we talk about when we talk about the orchestrating of user journeys and really aligning the core aspects of fraud and risk into that streamlined experience. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and actually hand it over to Vivek. He's going to take you through another use case where orchestration is powerful and extensible.
Thank you, Milan. Just going to take the screen. Right. Switch very quickly to the slides. So very quickly, what Milan showed you is an end-to-end user experience where you could invite users to register in a consumer IAM flow. What I'm going to show you here is a continuation of that. So consider that you're an organization which has created this new registration experience with this modern IAM system, and they have all these new users coming into the platform. But they also have a registry that was previously an LDAP, which contained all of that consumer information, and you had a number of people who are there, they're older customers. So what I'm going to show you today is a flow through which a user goes through a process of migrating their accounts from a legacy directory into Verify. And as part of the process, they're also invited to register for a phishing-resistant passkey authenticator for first-factor authentication. So we'll do three things. We'll look at migrating user accounts from the LDAP to Verify SaaS. We'll look at how the user is invited to register for a passkey. And subsequently, you'll also see that all of this is happening seamlessly during a user authentication flow without actually modifying the application or doing anything on the application end as such, or on the LDAP for that matter. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So just bring up the... So let's start with the application itself. So this is the current experience that the user might have with the application, where the user's basically given the option to log in with a username and password, right? So this is the default experience that the user is seeing, or it might be a third-party identity management system where it's showing you an LDAP username and password, or that form might be embedded in the application itself. That doesn't matter. What we're looking at here is how do they replace that experience with Verify? And to start things off, there are a couple of things that I'm going to be doing in this end-to-end flow. The first thing is similar to what Milan did. I'm more or less going to be setting the entire thing up, except for a couple of time-consuming steps. Number one, I've got the application here. It's federated as an OpenID Connect application. This happens to be a legacy application that uses header-based authentication. And in front of it, we've actually put our IBM Application Gateway Reverse Proxy. So that's actually authenticating with the IAM platform using a modern federation protocol. You have a connection that's created with the LDAP provider, which is the identity source here that I've configured. This is the on-prem LDAP, and it's connecting through a agent that's installed next to the LDAP or in a location where it can connect to the LDAP and connect back into Verify. And that's what is called the Verify bridge for authentication. And the third thing I'm going to show you is the flow designer, which is the new kid on the block. So I'm going to start with a new way of actually dealing with this. So Milan showed you how to build something from scratch. But there are many cases where you might have recipes that are already published. So we'll start here with a new workflow that I've already built and exported. And I'm going to just catch that. So here. And I'm going to copy this file, and I'll show you how to export that at the end if you're interested. But effectively what you do here is I have gone ahead and imported the flow. And I'm going to go ahead and click on import. And that creates a unpublished workflow. And you notice that this workflow is fairly comprehensive. It has a number of different steps, and we'll walk through that as we are going through the user experience. But effectively, I've imported the workflow, and I'm going to go ahead and publish this. Now, at this point, one of the things here to realize is this workflow, while I'm going to be kicking it off as part of a Verify authentication flow, you can also copy this deep link that's available as what is called the execution URL and embed that in your own application. So for example, the user registration experience that Milan showed, you could copy that link and embed that in your application as a sign-up link. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do with the flow designer that takes it beyond what you could do with a lot of the point and click features that we already have in the product. So let me do another thing here is remember that I have the application here. I'm going to switch the login experience here to use this theme. And I've already configured this theme to kick off that workflow as the authentication flow. So let's take a look at what we just saw. So I'm going to start again with the application. And this time you notice that the user experience is different, where it actually starts off with a different theme, where you see the logo and you see this option, and you're seeing an experience that's also called the identifier first authentication. I'm going to use a user account that does not exist in the directory. Just to prove that it doesn't exist in the directory, let me quickly switch back to the directory and show you that. Oops, sorry. Notice that no such records, right? So I'm going to go back to the application and I'm going to click continue. And at this point, let me just, I might not have configured the application correctly. Just give me a moment. Quickly just double check that. Sorry, that was the one that I had to choose. So let me go back here. I'll kick this off again. And this time, typically in a typical deployment of this sort, where you want to do the form of migration, you want to do it under the covers without the users actually knowing about it. So the user experience would typically be identical. But in this case, just for the sake of the demo, I'm showing you that I'm actually logging in with the Dune LDAP. Go ahead and log in with the user credential that's on the LDAP. And that automatically goes ahead and synchronizes the credential with Verify. Now, once that process is completed, remember that the next step here, so let's take a look at the workflow very quickly to understand what happened in all of this process. So you get a picture of how this flow is operating. So let's keep this on one end, keep the user experience on the other end. Let's take a look at the workflow itself. So we started out by asking for the username. We then, so let's zoom in a bit so it's easier. So we started out with asking for the username. We checked if the user account exists, and based on that, we send the user off to authenticate with the LDAP. So there's a decision point here. There's some bespoke logic here that determines how the user should log in, whether that's with the native cloud directory or that is with the LDAP identity provider, identity registry rather. So it's logging in through that. We completed that process. And as part of that process, it's actually updating the user account after it's being migrated onto the Verify Cloud directory. And then the next step that it does is it checks whether you have any passkeys. So this is typically in the scenario where a customer wants to invite people to use more phishing-resistant authenticators, which also happen to be extremely convenient. For example, using your macOS Touch ID, which gets synchronized across onto your iPhone and so on. So the intent here is to invite users to a more convenient and phishing-resistant experience. And so I'm going to go ahead and register my Touch ID. So I'm going to use my Touch ID here to authenticate. Now I'm just going to give it a name. I'll go ahead and complete that. Now all of that is happening as part of this step where I'm enrolling the passkey. And once the enrollment is completed, we are going through a process of evaluating risk. So this is the adaptive access capability that Milan spoke of earlier. And since I'm running this application on glitch, so given that it's a live demo, it decided to go to sleep. So let's give it a moment to just wake up. But while it does that, just quickly review what we saw in the workflow. So we went through the process of asking for the username. We fetched the user. We computed the identity provider URL. But notice that I didn't have to author everything within this canvas. There are a number of capabilities that Verify offers out of the box, such as the ability to connect to different identity providers and registries. I'm taking advantage of that by simply sending the user off to complete that flow. And when they return to the workflow is where it does more customized, more custom steps that get executed, such as updating the users migrated and so on, and then soliciting passkey registration. Now let's go ahead and log out entirely from this. And what I'm going to do here is just to make sure that I've fully logged out. I'm going to force a full logout. And I'm going to kick off the process again. And when I do it this time, I have an option to log in with a passkey that I just selected, but rather than do that, I'm just going to go ahead and type in the username here. So had I used the passkey, I could just log in with the Touch ID. But in this particular case, I'm directed, since it's a migrated account, I'm able to log in with a password. But let's take a look at the passkey experience, just to close this off. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Touch ID to authenticate. And the user is taken through the risk evaluation and sent directly to the application. So from a user experience standpoint, we just went from a username and password login experience, which tends to be highly phishable, to something that is much more convenient. It's a far better user experience, and it's using out-of-the-box passkey capabilities within the product. And I'm stitching all of these different steps within the Verify SaaS platform into a workflow of this sort. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to quickly switch back to the slides. So just to summarize here, what you've seen is where I modified the login experience for an existing application by making no changes to the app. You saw that that was a seamless switch. The second thing that you saw, that user accounts were migrated from LDAP into Verify, into the cloud directory, and the users were able to log in through that. And then you saw how the users invited to use passkeys and then subsequently use that for a better experience. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic back to Milan, and he'll take it away.
Thanks, Vivek. So just to wrap up here, I think a few things here that are pretty critical to take away. One is Verify SaaS offers an extensible set of capabilities. The Flow Designer is a very new and a very customizable capability that allows for orchestration. But there are other components in Verify that facilitate orchestration. And when pulled together with the Flow Designer, it could be very, very powerful for many use case types. What you just saw is you saw how the orchestration engine can interact with various identity providers, whether they're LDAP and Verify. And what you didn't see is it could also be another OpenID Connect or SAML-based identity provider. What you saw is the orchestration of security and fraud with native risk-based detection with the password intelligence capability. What we didn't even show you is the threat detection and response capability that we have. That wasn't part of this, and it was part of a previous webinar. But those are all the fundamental risk and fraud things that we're able to orchestrate within the Security Verify platform. And then the last thing you saw was the simplicity of how it gets used with the drag and drop, with the select drop-down selection, and so on. Now, there's a future webinar coming up in February that's going to talk about how what I just showed you with the registration can actually be extended into a third-party risk service to do an email risk score. So be on the lookout for that. Follow the community, and you'll stay updated on when that actually gets scheduled. And I saw a lot of questions on how you can get Flow Designer and user forms. So again, as I mentioned, we're in a public preview. So we're working with customers, with partners. If you don't have a verified tenant, I suggest you scan this QR code to get your verified tenant. It's a trial. And then send me an email requesting for orchestration. Put that in the subject, orchestration public preview, and we'll make sure we get you enabled with the Flow Designer. Our only ask once we enable this for you is that you are just open to give us feedback and work with us. And in my response to you, when it gets added, I'll send you the corresponding documentation and guides so that you can get started and actually start, developing and creating these flows that we just demonstrated here. So with that, I'll pause for any questions. I think we had answered them from when Vivek, you last ended, but I don't know if others have popped in.
Yeah, there was just one question. Maybe we'll just address that very quickly. I did answer it there, but I think it's worth talking about it very quickly. How do you do this in where you want to move it from a development environment into a production environment and so on? And one of the things I did not show you was the ability to export a workflow after you've authored it. So you can absolutely do that. So you can export the flow and then import it. If you are a sophisticated outfit which has great automation skills and so on, and you want to automate this entire process, you can use our APIs and absolutely do that as well.
Excellent. So if there aren't any questions, we appreciate you taking the time. For those that weren't able to join us for the full duration, or for those that weren't able to join us at all, we hope you can catch up with the recording. And as always, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out to your IBM Security Verify seller. And we're happy, and we're here to empower you and enable you to modernize your IAM with the rich set of capabilities we have within the IBM Security Verify platform. So with that, thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.